Atheism, agnosticism, anti-theism. You've definitely heard these words thrown around, but let's be honest, they're often used interchangeably and, well, incorrectly. So today, we're going to unpack what they really mean, because they represent some very distinct and fascinating ideas about belief, knowledge, and religion itself.
So what are we really talking about here? Is it just belief, or unbelief, or something else entirely? This goes way beyond some simple dictionary definitions. We're going to map out this entire landscape of non-belief to get a handle on what these positions truly claim, and just as importantly, what they don't.
All right, let's start with the big one, atheism. The absolute first thing you have to understand is that at its very core, this is a position purely about belief. That's it.
And the details here are absolutely key. The word comes from the Greek atheos, which means without God. So atheism isn't the big, bold claim that there is no God. Nope. It's simply the absence of a belief in one. Think of it like this. It's the default setting. It's a negation, not some positive assertion you have to go out and defend.
Why does that little distinction matter so much? Well, it all comes down to this really important idea, the burden of proof. By framing atheism as just a lack of belief, it puts the responsibility squarely on the person making the positive, and let's face it, extraordinary claim. The one who says a God does exist is the one who has to provide the evidence.
Our source uses a couple of brilliant analogies to really drive this home. I mean, you don't actively believe there's a ceramic teapot orbiting the sun somewhere between Earth and Mars, right? Or an invisible dragon in your garage? Of course not. You don't have to disprove them, you just don't believe in them because, well, there's zero evidence. The whole point is that for any claim you can't possibly test, the rational default position is simply not believing it.
Okay, now for our next term, agnosticism. And this is where so many people get tripped up, because agnosticism isn't even on the same playing field as atheism. It's answering a completely different kind of question. See, agnosticism comes from the Greek agnosis, meaning without knowledge. So it has nothing to do with what you believe. It's all about what you claim you can know for certain. It's really a statement about the limits of our human knowledge itself.
The easiest way to get this is to think of it on two totally separate lines. The first line is about belief. You either accept the claim that a God exists, that's theism, or you don't, that's atheism. The second line is about knowledge. You either claim to know something is true, that's Gnosticism, or you admit you don't or can't know, that's agnosticism. So here's where it all clicks into place. These terms can actually be combined. For example, an agnostic theist is someone who says, yeah, I believe in God, but I admit I can't prove it. And an agnostic atheist, which is where many atheists fall, says, I lack a belief in God, and I also don't claim to know for certain that one doesn't exist. You see, this grid totally shatters that common idea of the agnostic as someone just, sitting on the fence, unable to decide.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It completely reframes the whole idea. It's not about being wishy-washy, it's about a commitment to being intellectually honest about what we can and cannot prove. But, and this is interesting, the source also offers a bit of a critique. It argues that the way most people use the term agnostic, kind of like, oh, I don't know, so it's 50-50, can actually be a way to duck out of thinking about the evidence. The point is, we don't say it's 50-50 on that orbiting teapot, so why would we do it for this particular claim? Okay, now let's shift gears big time. We've covered belief, and we've covered knowledge. Anti-theism, our third term, brings in a whole new dimension, a moral and practical objection to religion itself. An anti-theist goes way beyond just lacking a belief. Their position is an active one. They argue that religion isn't just wrong, it's actually a negative, harmful force in the world. And that's a huge leap from a personal philosophical view to a full-blown societal critique. So you have to get this. The primary focus for the anti-theist isn't even about settling the old debate about whether God exists or not. It's that the practice of religion and the very idea of faith causes real, tangible harm. It basically yanks the debate out of the philosophical clouds and brings it right down to earth.
So what's the actual problem then? The core critique is aimed at faith itself, defined as believing something without evidence. The argument goes that this method of thinking can shut down critical thought, be used to justify horrific violence, prop up authoritarian leaders, and, this is a big one, it's uniquely resistant to being corrected because it places itself above evidence and reason.
All right, so if that's the critique, you gotta wonder, where does this stuff come from in the first place? Why are our brains so susceptible to it? Well, the source material digs into the evolutionary psychology of it all, and it is fascinating.
Okay, check out this evolutionary argument. Picture one of our ancient ancestors on the savannah. They hear a rustle in the tall grass. They have two choices: assume it's just the wind, or assume it's a lion. Now, if they assume it's a lion and they're wrong, what did they lose? Nothing. They just look a little jumpy. But if they assume it's the wind and they're wrong, they lose everything. They get eaten. So our brains literally evolved to be overactive agency detectors, to see intention and patterns even in total randomness. It was a survival mechanism.
The argument then goes that organized religion basically takes this natural, evolved tendency towards superstition and builds a massive social structure on top of it. It takes our pattern-seeking instincts and codifies them into doctrines, rituals, and powerful hierarchies.
And this brings us right to the heart of the matter, this central tension that runs through this entire debate, the deep conflict between what feels good and comforting and what might actually be true based on the evidence.
And to be fair, the source is careful to point out that religion provides some real benefits. It gives people a sense of community, a powerful story for their lives, a moral framework. But it also argues that every one of those goods has a potential shadow side. Community can curdle into tribalism, a comforting narrative can become a harmful delusion, and a moral structure can be used for oppression.
And wow, this quote really delivers a punch. It points to a simple, observable fact. What you believe religiously correlates almost perfectly with where you were born. So the source asks, if the ultimate truth of the entire universe just happens to depend on your longitude and latitude, can it really be considered truth?
So at the end of the day, it really seems to boil down to this fundamental choice. On one side, you have the path of intellectual honesty, which might mean accepting that we live in an indifferent universe where we have to create our own meaning. And on the other, you have the profound existential comfort of believing there's a built-in purpose to it all, that meaning is given to us.
And we're going to leave you with this final, really provocative thought from our source. It suggests that the true opposite of faith isn't just a passive state of doubt. It's the active, ongoing, evidence-based pursuit of certainty. Definitely something to chew on.